Well, there you are, and here I am. Welcome, everybody. It's Vic Solo back with you with another album review. Last time I was before you, I reviewed Kiss's debut album, their self-titled debut Kiss. And I could have gone chronological, and I could have gone with their sophomore album, Harder Than Hell. I will get to that one at a future date. But for today, I wanted to do something different. And again, excuse the fact that the writing's going to look backwards because I have to shoot these in selfie mode. But I figured we did one debut album from a Casablanca artist. Let's do another. This time we're doing Village People, the self-titled album from Village People. Try to get some glare off. There we go. It's backwards, but you get it. Village People, that's right. Group was formed in 1977 by two Frenchmen, Jacques Morali and Henri Bellelot. They had just come off of success with a girl group called the Ritchie Family, which was three lovely, lovely young ladies who had done a couple of great hits like The Best Disco in Town. And Jacques and Henri were looking to expand. So one day they were in Greenwich Village in New York City, and they were going to different clubs, different bars and discos, because disco was just blossoming at this point in 1970. Well, actually, this would have been about 76, because the first record, this album, came out in 77. So, 1976, Jacques and Henri are in the Village, and suddenly they heard bells behind them. And they looked around, and there was a man, a young, thin, in-shape young man in Native American regalia. His name was Felipe Rose. More on him in a moment. So then when they went into the bar, one of the bars called the Anvil, where Felipe was actually dancing. Felipe was in his Native American headdress and clothes dancing on the bar. And up at the bar, they saw cowboys and construction workers and policemen all bellying up to the bar, getting drinks and hanging out and having a good time. And Jacques said, this gave him an idea. So he approached Felipe, and then he had also approached a singer who was on Broadway named Victor Willis. Victor had done The River Niger and The Wiz on Broadway, and he had a good friend that co-starred with him in these shows named Alexander Briley. So Jacques and Henri employed Victor and Alex and Felipe to sing on this album called Village People, the name coming from the fact that the inspiration was drawn from Greenwich Village, New York. But in the background, there wasn't a group yet. In the background, Jacques hired some studio singers to sing backups. And for the cover, this cover that you see right here, these are actual models from Colt Studios, which was a photography studio in New York City at the time. But you notice that there is a Native American in the background, and yes, that is Mr. Felipe Rose, who would adopt that look in the group Village People. The reason Jacques did this, and Henri, they're a team, Jacques Morali, Henri Bellelot, may they both rest in peace. The reason that they did this is they wanted to test the water first. They wanted to put out a record with their new disco sound that they were cultivating, but they just wanted to see how the record would play in the clubs. They wanted to see how popular they could get the songs in the clubs. Now, this album, by today's standards, would probably be looked at as an EP because there's only 4 songs. However, the lengths of the songs, nothing under 5 minutes here. Everything's over 5 minutes. And that was done by design to keep people on the dance floor. So let's get into the album now that you know the story behind the early days of Village People. So they decided to release the album sort of quietly, but they also took it to, because this is what you did in those days in the 70s, particularly in New York City and Los Angeles, you were a producer with a new record, you would take, excuse me, your single or your extended length 12-inch single or your entire album, you take it to the discos, you take it to the dance clubs and hope that it got played and hope that it got a positive response on the dance floor. Well, to say that the first Village People album got a positive response would be a huge understatement. Because on the first side, you've got two songs that are actually one. Reason being is because there's a bridge, an instrumental bridge between the two songs, and no end. They just run one into the other, and that's what the discos, the DJs, and the dancers were looking for in those days, because you wanted to keep your dancers on the floor for as long as you could. So let's get into the songs. Well, this is a CD, of course, but in the old days on vinyl, side A would contain San Francisco and Everybody is a Star in Hollywood. Those are the two songs that run into each other. They were written by Jacques Morali, Henri Bellelot, Phil Hurt, and Peter Whitehead. They would pen all four songs on this first album. Victor Willis would start writing lyrics for songs starting on the next album, which we'll review at another time. But it was Bellelot and Morali, Hurt, and Whitehead who would pen the songs, words and music, for this debut album. And again, Victor singing leads, Victor Willis, and Felipe Rose, Alexander Briley, and some session singers are doing all the backups. And again, the people you see on the album cover are models from the Colts Photography Studios in Greenwich Village. So let's get into the songs now. San Francisco, a song about a city by the bay, as the song says, popular hangout among the gay culture, because that's the audience that Village People was initially targeted for, because in the 70s, a lot of your discos were populated by gays, blacks, Latinos, you know, a lot of quote-unquote minority groups, but these were the people that were cultivating the disco sound. You know, these are the people that were getting that stuff out there so we could all get on, well, I wasn't there, but so people could get out on the dance floor. I was 3 years old in Massachusetts. But these are the people that laid the foundation for disco, okay? And I've said before, Earl Young, the creator of the 4 on the Floor drum beat. We'll talk about that when we talk about the Tramps in a future review. But Village People really, this first album, San Francisco, and Everybody's a Star in Hollywood, like I said, they run into each other as one track, and that's how the guys would perform it in concert as well. Then on the second side, you've got Fire Island, which is a popular beach, and again, another gay hangout in New York City, but a fantastic song right here. The beat is great. The lyrics are fantastic. This is the one they would do in concert in the 70s and early 80s. Great song, a staple from their live shows. And then their fourth song is, the last song, the closer of the album is interesting. It's called Village People. That's right. The group is called Village People, the first album, and the last song is called Village People. And what it is if you listen to the lyrics carefully, Village People is an anthem. It's kind of a declaration. It's like, here we are, this is who we are. And, you know, we are one. We're strong. You know, it's like, come along with us. We're going to take you on this magical ride. And, that's what it's about, you know. There was a subtext to this album that if you were of the LGBTQ community, you got it. But if you weren't of that lifestyle, you enjoyed the beat, you enjoyed the lyrics, and you enjoyed the theatricality that the group would present later on when the group was formed. Now, let's talk about their first live performance in support of this album. So that took place in 1977 in the fall on Dick Clark's American Bandstand. Now, interesting to note, if you've ever seen the Village People perform, whether it be in concert, live, or on television, or good old YouTube, you'll notice there's always 6 Village People. There's always the policeman out in front doing the leads, whether it's Victor Willis, Ray Simpson, Ray Stevens, Miles J., Pye Douglas, whomever. And then you've got the chorus line in the back that as you're looking at the stage, you've got cowboy, construction worker, Native American holding center, leather-clad biker, and GI, or soldier. Sometimes even dressed as a sailor, depending on the day or the song. And that was always and that to this day, that's the aesthetic lineup of Village People. Was a little bit different in the support of this album, not only on American Bandstand, but here on YouTube, check it out. you can actually check out the first music video for the song San Francisco when it was released as a single, and it fades at the end and doesn't go into everybody is a star in Hollywood. There were 7 on stage. You had Victor Willis holding front and center as always, but he was not a policeman at this point. He was in kind of a Panama Jack hat and a leather vest with no shirt and some jeans. So kind of like a streetwise kind of guy. And Alexander Briley was not dressed as a soldier. He was dressed in just kind of some comfortable pants and a jersey and some suspenders. So his character was undefined. But you did see a biker, a Native American, a cowboy. The Native American was Felipe Rose, by the way. And you did see a cowboy and a construction worker. But also, in between the biker and Alex's character on the stage was a gypsy. Kind of a Hawaiian shirt unbuttoned to the navel and some tight jeans and a colorful bandana and like a shark tooth earring and a couple of hoops. And that was actually played by one of the composers, Mr. Peter Whitehead. So Peter Whitehead, in addition to penning these songs, appeared on stage with the guys for their first appearance in American Bandstand, as well as the promotional video for San Francisco. Now, what ends up happening with this album is it becomes such a huge hit that Casablanca, once again, our friends at Casablanca, Neil Bogart, who was flush off the success of Kiss and Donna Summer at this point, says to Jacques Morali and Henri Bellolo, you have to have a group. You have to flesh out a group that's going to go out and perform these songs live. Because now we want to push them out there. And so the guys that you used on Bandstand and the video, they're okay, but we think you could do better. So with Willis, Briley, and Rose already in place, Jacques put out an ad in the Village Voice saying, singers, dancers wanted, mustache required. So then it was after this album, Village People had gone gold, the search was on. So the first to answer the ad was an out-of-work actor named David Hodo. And I love David. And he adopted the look of the construction worker. David was originally from Sacramento, California. And he'd come in and had that look of a construction worker. Then Henri and Jacques were at a show featuring the outrageous Grace Jones. Anybody who knows Grace Jones knows what I'm talking about. Well, she had a couple of backup dancers, one of whom was no relation, Randy Jones from North Carolina, who was in New York trying to make it into Broadway. And according to Randy in the E! True Hollywood story about the Village People, he said that Jacques approached him and said, ooh, you have a mustache. Can you sing? Can you dance? And Randy was like, yeah. And decided to take on the gig as the cowboy. Being from North Carolina, he was a cowboy at heart. So then, as they're getting ready to put the group together, Jacques toyed with the idea of a fireman being the 6th member. They decided to drop the gypsy altogether, as Phil was more comfortable helping to write the songs. Well, in walks a toll collector from the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, head to toe in leather. Now, we had seen a biker type in a leather vest and a cap and some blue jeans in the San Francisco video, but this guy walks in full leather jacket, chains, eagle belt buckle, eagle pin up on the leather hat, leather chaps, motorcycle boots, and the big handlebar Fu Manchu style, like Hulk Hogan on steroids, mustache. That was Mr. Glenn Hughes. Rest in peace, Glenn. And they looked at him and they said, this is the guy. This is the guy that's going to round it out. So that's your opening lineup of Village People. Victor Willis is the policeman. Felipe Rose is the Native American. Alexander Briley is the soldier. Now, Victor and Alex have defined characters because of the look that Jacques and Henri remembered from walking around Greenwich Village. You've got David Hodo as the construction worker, Randy Jones as the cowboy, and Glenn Hughes as the leather-clad biker, or as they called him back then, the Leatherman. And what's interesting is Glenn's look would define kind of the S&M and kind of the LGBTQ biker look that would even be adopted years later by Rob Halford of Judas Priest. So it was an interesting, trend that Glenn had started just by showing up, being who he is. And that was fantastic. So then they hit the road and decided to promote the album, once again, Village People, before they would record their next one in right after Thanksgiving in 1977. And we'll get to that one at a future date. So, my thoughts on the debut album by Village People. This is a great debut. This is a great way to introduce us to the sound. Again, we didn't have the aesthetic group that we would ultimately have when the next album came out, but this introduced us to the disco, the Morali and Bilolo sound. This and Victor Willis's vocals and the wonderful harmonies that the backup singers did for this album. Top to bottom, San Francisco, Hollywood, Fire Island, and Village People, all great songs. Ones that I like to listen to this day, even though there's two groups now, Village People, Kings of Disco. We can talk about that at a later date. But this is where it all began. In 1977, the self-titled debut of Village People on Casablanca Records. Here it is on CD when it was reissued by Polygram. And here's the back cover if you ever wanted to take a look. And that gentleman in the tuxedo right there, that's Mr. Jacques Morali, the creator and producer of this wonderful group that I've always enjoyed so much. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. And look again for more of my album reviews that'll be coming up in the near future. I've done Kiss's debut. I've done Village People's debut. What have we got going next? Who knows? But I'm Vic. You're you. There you are, and here I am. And I'll see y'all real soon. Take care.